called Text, Beats, and Bytes. That's what we do every Monday. Are we all ready?
Yeah,
we good?
but
Ready.
What's up?
Can you hear me?
come up a little bit into the mic. You got to be like.
There we go. Can you hear me?
On the mic. On the mic.
Okay.
By the way, Facebook just hit us up, so we're gonna need self-born original music on the interlude. Copyright already hit us up for that last post.
All right.
So put that on cue.
Well, you know that's a good thing when they start looking at your content.
Yeah, they
that
looking,
means
they
something.
paying attention.
I got you.
So we are here for Tech Beats and Bytes. My name is Michael Hall, CEO and one of the partners of Digital Grass, and I'm here with the most amazing host that I've ever seen rock a microphone, our president of Digital Grass, LaToya Sturp.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
you.
yes,
Always
yes.
a pleasure.
All right. Yes, yes.
Hey, thank you, y'all.
Clap for her. The ladies holding it down.
Yep.
All right. So if you guys don't know who's here, that means you don't do too much in Miami. No, I'm just playing. If you don't know this man at this stage, you should get to know him, but we wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to get to know him. We know him as Mr. Do All, Mr. Do Right, Mr. Hold Down Real Estate, Mr. What's Next. Other people just call him Mr. Barron Channer. Barron, welcome to the show today, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to just jump right into it. Actually, you know what? Take 2 minutes and just tell the people a little bit about what you do and what's going on with you lately in the community.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. Barron Channer. I'm the CEO of Woodwater Group. It's a diversified investment firm focused primarily on real estate and technology. So day to day, my 75% of my day is spent focused on finding real estate investments.
Okay.
I also own a real estate advisory company, and so we've been building that over the last year and a half, or we've started to accelerate the development of that. So we're slowly building up a development management owner's representative firm. I got back to, in the last year, my original passion. And so I was originally trained as a computer engineer and worked in technology, a lot of Web 1.0 stuff.
All right, hold on. One time for the nerds and all
Yeah.
those people in computer science.
And he
One
said
time for the
Web
nerds.
1.0, so you
Well,
know that's a throwback.
So late 90s, early 2000 kind of stuff before the first crash. I spent a lot of time working for the dot-com firms that existed in Miami at that time. And over the last year, I've gotten back to that passion in a passive way. I'm no longer living the life day in and day out, but I'm doing what I didn't have available to me in those days. And so I'm trying to, where I can, be a investor and an advisor, particularly but not exclusively for founders of color. Because in those days, I thought I had some really good ideas when I go back to look at the notebook, but I didn't have the money contacts, and I wasn't in Silicon Valley, so I didn't have the confidence to think that I could succeed at the business.
Right.
So we were all in those days just focused on finding the next good job that was paying us well, as opposed to the next idea that could raise $1 billion. And I'd like to see that, make my contribution to seeing that change. So I'm doing that as well.
Okay. My first question, I mean, I know me and Toya, we got a lot of questions, so this is going to be time sensitive.
Yeah.
You mentioned two very distinct things, but a lot of people don't tie them together.
Yeah.
Real estate and technology.
Yeah.
And I know you have the new center that's coming up in a new area that's being built, the Miami Innovation District.
Yep.
So how are you tying real estate and technology together?
Well, I think there's a natural tie-in. You know, what you will find is that if you have analytical ability, right? If you think about the jobs of the future, the people who can analyze things, find examples in the past and stitch it together, find examples in one industry, move it to another, who have good faculty with numbers. Those are the people that are going to flourish. And when you look at technology, in particular computer science, and when you look at real estate, the nexus of those two is that the foundation is logic, the foundation is analysis, and then they're both overlaid with some level of creativity. So that at root, they're connected and they're always connected. In my case, the way that I'm trying to tie it together is, you know, as you think about how South Florida is growing and expanding rather,
Right.
you know, now people are becoming increasingly aware of the neighborhoods, and neighborhoods have names, Wynwood and Upper East Side, and you know, there's certain neighborhoods like Overtown and Coconut Grove that have always had names, but every neighborhood is developing a name, and every neighborhood is looking to find a path for attracting the types of people that you all have drawn here for Tech Beats and Bytes. And what they've realized is that your crowd, right, the millennials, the exennials, the Generation X types are interested in creativity, and creativity of the day is going to have a flavor of technology. So if you're a real estate investor, developer, if you're someone who cares about community development, you should also care about how are we cultivating spaces for innovative people, whether it be people who are pure technologists or people who are innovative in their creativity to gather and get together.
Right.
Which is why you see, in places like Little Haiti, you see conversation about innovation centers. You go to Fort Lauderdale, you hear conversation about innovation centers. You go to Coconut Grove, you hear conversations about, I wish we had an innovation center. You go to Atlanta, they're talking about the innovation center and how it scales. So it's a conversation about how you curate an audience. Because at heart, real estate is really simple. It's just, bricks and sticks for people to live, work, or play in.
Right.
And the dominant influencer for that nowadays is technology and entertainment.
Yeah, and you touched on a lot of great topics in that answer. What sort of solutions are you investing in? You talked about investment, and you hit on the different cities or neighborhoods across Miami. What are you sort of investing in right now that will do that, create new opportunities and solutions for Coconut Grove, for Little Haiti, for Overtown?
Sure thing. Well, combination. Some of it's what I'm investing in, some of it's how I invest my time. I think if you drive yourself with a primary focus on how you're going to make money, most of the things you do will not benefit the people who come from the neighborhoods that I grew up in, because they just don't have the money to pay for it.
Right.
So in those instances, I spend a fair amount of my time. It's got to be 25% of my time for the last 2 years, and who knows how many more years, actively collaborating with, supporting organizations that are community development organizations looking to revitalize neighborhoods for no compensation other than the joy of seeing that neighborhood
Flourish.
potentially
Wow.
flourish,
Right.
In terms of how I am investing, I have a basic thesis that I think plays out well in Miami, and that is
All right, here go all you startup entrepreneurs. He about to give you the key.
the basic real estate thesis, right? If you in any investment, if you start off with the basic premise that I'm not necessarily smarter than everybody else, but I could potentially be faster to the answer than everybody else, you take approach of finding trends, like baby boomers are getting old. So, and they're a large percentage of the population. So that means that we're going to have greater and greater demand for healthcare.
Right.
Millennials are the largest generation, and they are 20s, late teens and 20s, and they are people who like character and style. So that means if you're a hotel developer or investor, your hotels are going to need to start to become more like the W than the boring Marriott around the corner in order to attract that kind of person. My particular thesis comes from just my experience having grown up, and as I became a little bit more informed about America, I saw the pattern repeat itself, and that is, if you look at the major urban centers in America, so the top 10 areas or top 20 areas by definition of population density, what you realize is that between the 40s and as the superhighway system in America was being built up, as the civil rights movement was progressing, and we won't get into why or how, but a whole host of forces conspired such that relatively wealthy people went to the suburbs. The business always stayed in downtown, so they worked in downtown, and the real estate around it was quote unquote underinvested, abandoned, whatever your perspective is. And so the people who occupied that space tended to be poorer people. A high percentage of those people tended to be people of color.
Why did it always end up that those people are in like the Northwest? It seems like the Northwest of every neighborhood is a.
Well, you actually hit on a good point, and it's really simple, right? If you think about how America has come out of the post-industrial era, we were driven by highways, railways, and ports. And you often had a grid kind of philosophy to how you organized your city. And so you started off with a small downtown, which was your hub of trade and activity. Then someone started to run a road. And so you always ended up with an ability to set up a Cartesian grid, basically a square.
Right.
And because of the racial mores of the day, you couldn't comfortably, in almost any city in the U.S., have the black people, and at that point it was predominantly only black people, other than white people, you couldn't comfortably have them live, work, and play in the same
same space.
environment. So you always gave them a space. You recognized the importance of them to your economy, and you gave them a place to have their own existence. And that was usually on the other side of the train track, on the other side of the train, on the other side of the highway, or on the other side of the river.
Right.
Oh.
Which is
So-
a good example of Overtown.
That's a good example for
Yeah.
Overtown. It's a decent
Sis
example
Trunk.
for Sis Trunk.
Yeah.
Same
Right?
story,
You can go
every
into
city.
Delray. You can go to New York. It just
Right.
happened to be the borough. You can go to D.C. and 8th Ward. You can go to Baltimore,
So-
East Side.
One of the questions I want to ask you is, I know as somebody that I've called for advice for development,
Yeah.
can you kind of explain to some people that's watching from home and the people that are here the importance of presence, just being present at these boards? I mean, I see you a lot of places, and that's why I
Yeah.
brought it up in your intro. You make sure to be present in the things that matter to you.
Yeah.
You're not just at home texting about it and putting it on Instagram or your Facebook page. You're actually at those board tables.
Yeah.
Can you explain the importance of presence right now with the issues we're dealing with?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there are many ways to be present. So I don't knock the folks who text and tweet and Facebook and so forth. I think everybody should play their lane. Stay in your lane. Whatever the circumstances, I've been, whether it be fortunate or I've just found myself in a position where certain people of influence respect my input. And also respect me in a way that allows me to give them my input as someone who is a Jamaican immigrant who grew up in North Dade in a lower socioeconomic class, and the luck that I found myself with is the ability to understand numbers, to turn that into a scholarship or two,
Right.
and then escape from that, right? So in that regards, I get to play in certain rooms that I recognize others don't get to play into without it there being any particular rationale other than I've stayed in that lane and
Right.
not fallen off of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
And
but
so in that sense, when you think about a city, this is a amazing city, and an amazing city that has matured before our eyes, right? In 1995, no one was calling us a global gateway. We may have been, but no one was calling us that, right? That probably didn't start to happen until maybe 2005. So now the decisions that are being made at such a high level. It's no longer just a little town where folks are going to be spending time focused on what's going on in North Miami when they make a decision, or what's going on in Perrine or Goulds. And I like to think that in part the way I grew up, but also in part the way I've lived my life, I'm not living in these neighborhoods all the time, but I'm spending a tremendous amount of time in all of these neighborhoods with all sorts of folks. So I have a decent understanding, and I've always been an interpreter. In my existence has always been, because I've always been different enough from all the major groups, but similar enough and liked enough to be able to move between them. And so in this case, in Miami,
Sound like a T-shirt.
right, I've
Yeah.
always embraced the role of moving between what I like to call the local average black person whom I grew up with, and the power structure which I was cultured into and introduced to and have the opportunity to be around on a consistent basis. And so if you're not there, the decisions that are being made, you think about, where we are right now, you probably would have gotten the support, but I suspect when the Knight Foundation heard your idea, heard you say you were going to gather the kinds of people who are here before us today,
Right.
and not flinch in terms of their support for that level of inclusivity, that kind of stuff organization doesn't make that decision. People with a certain mindset as to what they want to build within our city make that decision. And to do that, you have to come to the table with your own cultural bias, respecting others.
Right.
And so in those rooms, I talk with many hats. I'm a young guy who's into technology. I'm a very well-educated guy who thinks our city needs to be increasingly more world-class. And I'm also a Jamaican guy from a poor background who think those people deserve a viewpoint as well, because I was just as smart when I was poor as I am now when I'm not
Right.
poor. And
Just as smart when I was
Exactly.
poor. I like that. Go ahead.
I would like
Toby.
for you to unpack a little bit, because you talked about
Yeah.
that you were able to gain their ear. How did you do that? Was that education? Was it just sort of the way you were brought up? What sort of put you in that position to be able to be in those rooms and talk confidently with those people?
You know, it's weird. I was actually thinking about that the other day. I've never really lobbied for particular positions. So all the board positions that I'm on right now,
Because you're on a lot.
none of them were board positions that I said I
A
want
lot.
to be on.
Pam.
I'm on a lot. I'm on a lot.
Yes.
Pam,
A lot of
Knight
powerful
Knight
ones,
Foundation.
too.
Knight
Yeah.
Foundation.
Yeah,
Let's
Knight,
not
yeah.
forget Knight Foundation. So I've never lobbied that. But what I've done is, at every instance, I've never left the opportunity on the table to make a mark on someone, right? So it's simple. I am a immigrant who moved to the U.S. at the age of 8, single child with a at the time, relatively poor mother who didn't have a social infrastructure. So at every instance of my introduction to American society, it was impressed upon me that if you're not proving your value, then you're in trouble. And what I learned is that the beauty of America, which sometimes the challenge is, it doesn't matter so much what your family name is or what neighborhood you were born into. If you can take that introduction to impress upon someone your intellect and your value,
Take advantage of it.
take advantage of it, right? So at every instance when I was a young technology architect, I would meet all sorts of lawyers for the companies that we were working for. And I always impressed upon them my desire to help Miami, my desire to contribute and commit to Miami. Mind you, this was a day when everybody who was getting a top-end degree or could earn $50,000, $60,000 was trying to find the next plane to leave Miami.
Right.
They loved it, but they thought their professional careers would
They
have
could
to
only
be
go so
elsewhere.
far.
Yeah.
So I've always been about Miami,
Pro-Miami.
regardless of where I was, and it just started to resonate. Then what you find is once you get onto one of these boards, and I was fortunate enough to in my case, to get on the board of Baptist Health System about maybe 13 years ago. And the way it happened is I was actually doing a fundraiser. I went to the CEO, invited him to support us, and he actually wanted to see where the money was going and saw how I ran the meetings and how I coordinated. And he said, hey, we're going to have an opening. You are probably 20 years younger than anybody on our board,
need
but that's
you.
actually part of what I like about you. Will you join the board?
Right.
And as you start to be around these people, and as we start to normalize the expectation that you're just as insightful, just as passionate, just as smart as everybody else, people start to look past the differences. The differences create barriers of assumption.
Right.
And if you can ever cross those barriers, what you find is most people don't care about the difference. It was just that the difference created a higher hurdle for you.
I think
Exactly.
I think that's one important
Yeah.
part that you're bringing up, because that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to put together Tech Beats and Bytes.
Yeah.
Our part was to bring out some of the what we consider the influencers of Miami and just have a regular conversation with them, because sometimes people always say, well, how do I reach them? Where are the resources? And it's always amazing to me. I'm like, most of these people are everywhere you're at. I mean, it's a small
Or either
town
everywhere
in
you're
a big,
not, because you're not present.
because you won't speak up.
Yeah.
Right.
So Self-Born wanted me to ask you a question.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Great DJ, by the way. I
Yeah.
miss Love Hate.
Oh,
Appreciate you,
wow.
my brother.
That's what I'm talking about.
See? Appreciate that. Appreciate
Culture. Self-Born wanted me to ask you to explain the Panama Papers. And with the Panama Papers coming out with real estate, how do you think that's affected Miami, and how will it affect Miami over the next 5, 10, or 20 years?
Long term, I don't think it's going to have any significant long term effect at a macro level, meaning the overall market. So for those who do not know,
I was about to say, you got to tell them about the
Yeah,
Panama
yeah.
Papers just in case.
and deep question, he was trying to catch me almost. But for those who do not know, the Panama Papers, probably about 12 to maybe 15 months ago, there was a hacking incident. Panama is a trans-global location in which international businesses tend to register companies and do transactions there because historically you've been able to lean on a greater degree of confidentiality. So if you were a Chinese national and you wanted to buy a $20 million home in the US, China actually doesn't allow you to move that much currency typically without approval. But if you were able to find a way to get the money out, you could create a corporation or the right corporate entity in Panama, and rest assured that they would treat your information in the same way that Switzerland
Right.
would treat your information, a great degree of discretion, so people wouldn't know. what started to happen all across the U.S., and this predated this issue and has no nefarious background, is wealthy individuals don't want you to know that they own a $10 million home on Star Island. And any of us can readily, in 5 minutes, you can figure out who owns any given home in most cities in the U.S. So what people start to do is they start to buy these homes through companies, so you would know the company name, but not necessarily the ownership structure behind it. Well, fast forward about 12 months ago, maybe longer actually, there was a hacking incident and a bunch of information from some of the prominent law firms in Panama was stolen and revealed, and that information gave you the details behind these companies, and so you started to realize, high net worth Mexican individuals own this company. Billionaire from Malaysia owns this company in this real estate. And so that started to create, for that moment of time, a little bit of a chill, because many of these people were going through these, clandestine, I don't mean, not necessarily nefarious. In some cases, maybe that's true, but not necessarily nefarious, but clandestine or secret means of owning assets. And they started to now be disclosed and discovered publicly. Newspaper articles start to come out in different countries. You start to realize that many ministers in Euro countries own substantially more real estate than they were letting on, and so they were poor perceptually in their country or of modest means and had a $10 million home in Miami or LA or wherever have you. So it created a short-term chill, but long-term, as it relates to Miami, Miami is one part of the U.S., and the U.S. is the most liquid real estate market in the world, and also the real estate market with the lowest level of volatility. As long as the U.S. continues to be an attractive place for folks to own assets, Miami as an ascendant city and as one of the global gateway cities is going to continue to be attractive, and people are going to find other means and mechanisms to own that real estate.
Right.
The mechanism that they were using has not been deemed illegal, so people continue to own real estate and other stuff through LLCs or other corporations. The one thing that has changed is that our federal government was moving towards forced disclosure of the principal beneficiary behind the LLC, so you'd have to tell us. All that's going to end up happening is they're going to start to have trust lawyers, so have a lawyer who has a fiduciary responsibility to you, own it. And so one lawyer is going to look as if they own $1 billion worth of real estate, when the reality is they have 100 families that they represent for that. So people are going to migrate, and that's not going to change, by the way.
That's cool. So, Toya, I know you got another question. Guys, if you have a question, Q, if you can come up to the front. Q is going to be standing right here. You can ask your questions. But at this point, we do our little rapid fire. So these responses are about, and Toya, I do want you to get those other questions out. We're just going to make them.
And I got one more, too, before we go. So
okay, so
I'm in queue.
Come on, Q. Come on up. So we're just going to let you guys know, if you want to ask a question, come tell Q your question. But we're going to go through these next 7 minutes with a lot of rapid fire. So
how short you want me to keep my answers?
About 30 to 45 seconds.
Okay.
I like that. Y'all ready?
Go.
All right. So first question is, you mentioned Love Hate. Who is your favorite artist? And what's the song that represents Barron Channer?
Talk to us.
Oh, wow. Well, if you're going to have a song that represents Barron Channer, Iron Lion Zion, Bob Marley.
Okay.
As Jamaican as you can get in my mind, even though people don't perceive it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Toya, what's your question? Go ahead.
Historic preservation versus redevelopment, can they coexist?
Absolutely can coexist. More training needed for the average developer because it's perceived to be easier to destroy than to preserve.
What's hot? What's next that people are ignoring when it comes to development in Miami?
Black neighborhoods, not in downtown. And I'm being facetious, but rail and elevation. So if you're approximate to where a rail station could be, and if you're in an area that has relatively high elevation, and you can't actually find the maps to tell you what the elevation, what you'll realize is that those places tend to be further inland, in many cases west of I-95. And for anyone who's grown up in and around South Florida, you know that west of I-95, you tend to have a more middle-class environment,
Right.
which means you tend to have a higher proportion of African American and Hispanics.
Go ahead, sophomore.
Now, in a previous life, I bet you didn't know, I used to be a mortgage broker. So I really want to dig
wow.
into, I want to dig into the real estate on a lower realistic level for people. Everybody want to flip properties and want to dig into buying property. So
Yeah.
jumping into 2017 and what helps people, because I remember back in the day, there was nothing on the internet. There really wasn't a lot of resources to educate people, and that's what I did. I took on a responsibility to educate everyone on understanding interest rates.
Wow.
What would you say would be like, I guess maybe if you got one or two, maybe even three sites or any resources that you would give to the would-be investor, or just to understand your own interest rate? Because a lot of people out here are buying homes, they're buying property really quick, and not understanding stuff like private mortgage insurance and, you know, all of those terms. So give me some resources, maybe some .coms you got it,
Okay.
or whatever.
All right. Well, basic finance and mortgage finance stuff, I would tell you two websites. One, finance.com, just a good site to get information. And two, Bankrate, BANKRATE.com. You can go to Bankrate and see all of the key index rates that banks use to establish the pricing for their loan. If you're going to invest in real estate, I always tell people, understand people and how they are moving, because real estate is really nothing if people don't have an interest in it. And so it's always good to keep topical understanding of how people are enjoying their living environment, how people are working. For that, I would encourage folks to consider exmiami.com. Great website. It shows you what all of the seasoned real estate investors are doing, and oftentimes if you are looking to ride the wave, being around them is a good place to be, right? If the good surfers know where the wave is, then just follow them, let them take the first wave, and you follow behind them, and chances are you're going to do better than you would on your own.
All right.
I would also say miamitoday.com, particularly the real estate section, is a good thing to read. You have to understand how businesses are moving, because most people in America are motivated by where they work
Look
and
at
how
us,
they work.
both of us up here taking notes.
Right.
All right.
Talk to them.
You got the video, right?
Yeah, we got it. We're going to be looking over
Right, but we like to get it for
got it.
ourselves, you know.
Personal note. What is the direction of art and real estate for Miami in the next 10 years?
Art?
Yes.
Art and real estate up. Let me qualify that. One, I think Miami, for those who don't recognize, we're already established as a global hub of art. Art, art is fueled by creativity, but it's also fueled by money. If you don't have a patron class of people who have the wealth to subsidize the artists, then you don't get the same amount of productivity. And so Miami has significant amounts of wealth, international and U.S.-born wealth. We have a stylistic perspective on life, and so art is a part of how we build our natural form, and increasingly average person is becoming well aware of art. By the way, go to Perez Art Museum.
There you go.
Second
Absolutely.
Saturday is always free to everyone and anyone, as many people as you choose to, but also choose to go there any one of the other days of the month and get a membership if you can. Art is becoming a part of our culture.
Yes.
And what you find is like anything, right? When you get to the point to start think about higher order things, right? For those of you who study or pay attention to Pavlovian hierarchy, we've now moved to a stage as a city where we're thinking about how to be a global city. It's no longer how do we absorb and assimilate all of these wonderful people from different shores and teach them how to be American. It's no longer about that. It's about how do we become a global city, and so we've embraced art. Real estate is going to continue to go up. Now, there will be cyclical shocks, so yes, there's some truth to gluts here and there, but you got to start by asking yourself a simple question. Are more people moving here or moving to Miami or moving away from Miami?
Right.
If more people are moving to Miami, are they packing themselves in more tightly, or are they finding more real estate to occupy? And we've not yet moved to a Japanese construct where people are willing to live in 200 square feet.
And a closet.
So we're going to need to make more real estate for more people. Classic economy. More demand
Right.
with a relatively constrained inventory means higher price points.
So you got two more quick fires for him before we get to
I
the
do.
audience? Go ahead.
Brightline, what does it really mean for Overtown?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh, well, I had some exposure, by the way. So short. Let me say this. So taking off my professional rivalry
Here you
hat.
go. This is stuff we want to talk
Yeah,
about.
taking off my professional rivalry hat. I do think there is significant value to having mass transit accessible to you. I am highly disappointed, and I was probably one of the first people. Now, this is not an indictment of the value of it, but I'm
Right.
highly disappointed by the fact that the engineering approach required the support system to create what is effectively a wall that walls off a good chunk of Overtown.
Right.
Now, there's probably, I didn't study it, so there's probably some pragmatic realities to that. That said, the biggest thing that I think will be the impact is the train station will make Overtown, over time, increasingly perceived by others as just an extension of downtown. What that's going to do is it's going to make the place more accessible psychologically for folks to live, work, and play. So you're going to see, I think, almost a Harlem level impact, which is, and that's part of the challenge with the U.S. system, right? Is economic progress
That boy saying some things tonight.
is often decoupled from balancing cultural preservation. And
Right.
so no one in America has really figured out how to have a good conversation. There's some people who want to stop it. And then I say to those people, listen, when I was poor, I wanted the rich people on my team. If that means they're in my neighborhood, then we should invite them in. But then you have people who only want to build stuff that is unaffordable. And I think the only change we're going to have is if you have a class of developers or a generation of developers who embrace the idea of mixed income housing, and you recognize that in order for us to have a community, we have to be able to sustain or support the folks who are not as wealthy as the other folks and figure out what that looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, so real
Yeah.
quick,
Yeah.
FBI investigation groups, as far as real estate, they're only in 2 cities, Miami and New York City, as far as money laundering and real estate.
Uh-huh.
How bad is that for us, or does it just mean we moving that much money?
Nothing new. Nothing new for us. And by the way, the cities they don't have a systemic presence in, they'll go there on a regular basis. What it means is that if you're attractive to the people who are going to operate in a straightforward and legal way, you're also going to be attractive to the people who want to operate in a nefarious way, right? So there's not a whole lot of money laundering. There's not a whole lot of illegal money going into real estate in places that are unattractive. So I don't think it's particularly significant for us. I do think that some of the increased publicity around investigations of development firms and so forth will serve to start regulating how people approach some of the activities that we've taken for granted. And what I've seen in my travels professionally between DC, New York, and Miami, in Miami, within the development world, there's a higher degree of laxness to how we go about dealing with fiduciary responsibility, transparency. It doesn't mean that we're any more corrupt or less corrupt, but we're far more lax, and that always leaves open the possibility of more punishment and criminal incarceration.
Hi, Barron.
Hey there, Q.
Great conversation. So the question from the audience is, technology and real estate can be very complex industries. How do we get those people of color who feel discouraged more involved?
Absolutely. There's actually, first of all, you start by saying we should be playing in this space, right? I don't recall, and mind you, I came from a different perspective, from an immigrant perspective. I don't recall anybody in my neighborhood when we didn't have decent streetlights, we didn't have medians. No one said this was an investment opportunity. Right. Knowing what I know now, I wish someone would have told me that, because that's where my savings would have gone. So we have to agree and embrace the idea that we're going to gentrify our own neighborhoods. Gentrification is not a bad thing. Cultural appropriation, cultural obsolescence is a bad thing, and that comes when the people who have been there are either unable to or unwilling to participate in the future economic development of their neighborhood. So I think we need more people who are actively informed about that. There's actually an interesting program going on in Detroit where someone has partnered up with the University of Michigan and some community associations, and they are crafting classes that will teach regular folks to invest not only in residential real estate, but I think people have to start thinking about investing in commercial real estate as well.
Right.
I am taking a look at that and trying to encourage the folks who are involved to consider coming to Miami.
Bringing it down here, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I'm talking
As
about.
far as technology, you have some of those things that are going on right now. One, you need to expose your youth to technology in a way that they become producers. They're
Shout
already
out to Stephanie for bringing
right?
the kids out tonight. And so somebody bring their kids to the
Wonderful, wonderful, right? So you have to start introducing folks to technology as producers. We are already consumers, so we know how to use technology and we're very facile with it, but we don't really think about being producers. We have to start thinking about owning it and bringing those programs to our community. I believe foundations, community foundations, private foundations, as well as local government play an important role. And because what you tend to find is that cohort of people, they're the ones who are most focused on folks who are middle class and poorer, because the regular market tends to say that doesn't pay. So if they started, as you've seen in Miami, there are many things that the foundations in our city has started. Once they started, the private market follows them and sees it as being validated. So we need more people saying we need coding camps in Perrine and Googles. We need community organization and churches, by the way. In many of these communities, we need the churches and the community organizations to be smarter about how they invest in real estate or availing themselves of the many professionals who are upright and will volunteer or will work for them on a straight up basis to figure it out.
Exactly. Using their platform for sure.
All right, so y'all know we could do this all night, but just because I know that can't be it of choice, but because you're here at Wynwood Yard and we make money by supporting the bar, what is your drink of choice, sir?
You know, it's funny. I'm not a big drinker. I didn't even start drinking until I think I had my first drink, maybe 24, 25.
Okay.
But I will say, if I had to choose a caipi vodka or a
All right.
caipirinha with vodka.
Okay, so look, you want to talk to Mr. Barron Channer, you know what to buy him. Buy him a drink, meet him at the bar. He's going to hang out for a little bit. We sure he got about 30 other things to do, but we got him here for
I'll
the
be
day.
here. I'm here.
So, but honestly, we let this run long because you don't cut off knowledge, and we really appreciate you coming here. I don't know, guys, what you think? By a round of applause, we bring him back, right?
Thank you. Thank
I mean,
you. Thank you.
you can't help the community if you don't share knowledge. So thank you, Mr. Barron Channer, for coming on Tech Beats and
My
Bytes.
pleasure.
So real simple, guys. If you don't have a drink, the show gets better the more you drink. The more you drink, the funnier I sound. So we got a one-song intermission. When that song goes off, we're back into part two. So, and of course, the song itself is going to represent who we bring it back up. He's going to find it hilarious, but this song will represent Mr. Matt Hagman. So one song intermission, and we'll be back for part
do
two.
I get my song?
We got you next.
Okay, all
we
right,
got you
all
at the end. We,
right, all right.
Now we going reggae for
All right,
you.
all
We
right.
got you.
Yeah,
We
yeah, all
got
right,
you.
all right.
So one song intermission, guys. We'll be right back for part two. 5-7 years ago, though. So we're back for part two of Tech Beats and Bytes. I am Michael Hall, and I'm here with LaToya Stirrup, the best host.
Hello.
The man giving you the great music. DJ Self-Born.
Who is he?
DJ Self-Born. DJ. All right. So
Rewind.
y'all have to understand. Y'all know who that was playing. That was Christopher Wallace, born May 21st, 1970, something before me, but that was my birthday, May 21st. I'm a Gemini Taurus. But the representation of the song Big Papa is because the man on the stage is also notorious. He is Biggie Smalls. He is our Big
How long
Papa.
have y'all been doing this? Because this has become a thing.
We've been doing it for about, Teach, how long we been doing this, my man? Matt wanted about 2 months. We started
Is
in
this
April.
number 10?
3 months?
Maybe 3 months, yeah, man. So if you don't know him, that means you are pretty much not that involved in Miami as much as you should be in the tech and journalism
Appreciate it, Mike.
and artistic field. But this man goes by the name of Matt Hagman. Let's give Matt Hagman a round of applause.
Thank you.
We had to wait till we got some things ordered and straight. What's up, Eric? We wanted to make sure we knew what we were doing before we bought one of our primary sponsors and believers to digital grass format. I'm not even going to tell you who he is. I'm either going to let Toya do it or let him do it. Toya, how would you describe Matt Hagman?
Well, I said it before. He is the man behind the plans
He is pretty much Shaq.
of Miami.
He is, he is that dude. But-
He's that dude. But I think we should let Matt just
Yeah,
break
Matt,
down.
why don't you just tell the people?
exactly
Because some
who he
people out here
is.
don't know who you. I don't know why they don't know you, but some people don't know who you are. So tell them a little bit.
Well, first of all, it is just an honor and a privilege to be up
you.
here with you. I really
Thank
mean
you.
it. This has become a Monday night here is an honored place, and so I feel honored to be able to participate. So
Teach, you
thank
heard that, right?
I
He
really
said this is a honored place on
Teach,
Monday night.
really.
We did that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So what I have this great privilege of working at Knight Foundation, which
Okay.
is this foundation here in Miami. We do work all over the U.S., but my role is here in Miami. And essentially what we do is find amazing people who are doing cool things,
Like
delivering-
digital grass,
like
yes,
digital
yes,
grass,
yes.
Absolutely.
like these two people right up here.
Yes, yes.
Like you, Latoya, Michael, but like
I'm all right.
Latoya,
Latoya is the one
and,
holding
you
it
know,
down. I'm
Right.
just.
who are doing amazing things, and we just try to help. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be able to work at a place where we can have the opportunity to do that, and hopefully we're doing some good in the community, and finding great people who are doing really incredible things.
I'm gonna jump to one of the most dynamic things that stood out to me in the last 2 or 3 months. It was an article written, and it noted that the Knight Foundation had given $500 million to diversity and to women entrepreneurs and organizations focused on that. And I think it's a real important thing because there's a lot of people talking about diversity and inclusion, and it became just a hot topic, not really an action item. But you guys were doing it before it was even really an action item.
We're trying. I mean, so it was 5 years ago that we launched this effort here in Miami, focused on supporting entrepreneurs of all kinds to help to make Miami a place where people can build the ideas and solve the problems that are most important to them. But as we think about innovation and creating, making Miami a center of innovation in its own right, what that sort of set on is what makes Miami's great differentiator, right? And that is its diversity, right? I mean, innovation is built on diversity. Innovation is built on, people of diverse backgrounds and ideas connecting and colliding in one another. And it's out of those sort of connections and collisions that the richest ideas are found and
Absolutely.
ultimately the greatest impact is felt. And so, going forward, the thinking is that, while of course there will continue to be primary centers of innovation in the world, what we're going to see is new and emerging ones.
Okay.
And sort of our sort of working theory going forward is it's those that are best able to leverage diversity, those that are able to make it a buy for, of the entire community are the ones that are going to do best. Right?
Okay.
I mean, we have this amazing opportunity in front of us that is we're seeing, we're in the middle of, or we're just in the very beginning of what is, will likely be viewed as the biggest sort of technological revolution we've been through. We've been through them before,
Right.
but what's
Right.
different here is that we're seeing so many different technologies at once.
Happening
right?
at the same time.
Now,
yeah.
on the one hand, this could result in something that's not good, right? This could result in sort of an amplifying the inequities that we see right now. On the other hand, if we sort of find a way to reach up and grab hold of it, that this presents an opportunity to transform communities in a way we've never seen before,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to be a part of driving.
All right, go ahead, Toya.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you were talking about the what Knight Foundation does, but why? Why did Knight Foundation get into the business of investing and helping to entrepreneurs and startups to flourish?
Yeah. So we really hadn't done that before, up until about 5 years ago. The historically and to this day, Knight does a lot of work in the arts, does a lot of work in journalism,
Yeah.
which is really important work that's core to our mission of promoting informed and engaged communities. Knight Foundation was launched by two former newspaper publishers, Jack and Jim Knight, who back in their day had the biggest newspaper chain in the U.S. That's where the money comes from. They just sold.
In
Exactly.
case y'all missed that, we're gonna say that one more time. Just say that one more time for Matt in case they missed
So
that.
the founders of Knight Foundation, they had, what at one point was the biggest newspaper chain in the U.S. Philadelphia Inquirer, Detroit Free Press, Miami Herald, Charlotte Observer, San Jose Mercury News, 26 papers all over the U.S. And so that's where the endowment that Knight Foundation has today, that we have the great benefit of, spending on amazing people doing awesome things, across the community. That's where that comes from, right? So that's where the money comes from. And so as we think about promoting informed and engaged communities, obviously the arts and journalism are really core parts of that. But also, I mean, as we think about particularly the engaged part, right? Think about the informed part and the engaged
Let's
part.
talk about that part. Let's talk about that.
Making sure that we're creating a community where each one of us has the ability to solve the problems that we see or build the ideas that we want to build to pursue the dreams that are important to us. That's a healthy community.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the more that we can create an environment, an ecosystem, where we have the resources, whether it's connection to others, whether it's mentorship, whether it's access to funding, learning opportunities, whatever it might be, that's a better and healthier place.
Right.
Right? And we're heading into a moment, though, where there's going to be even more of a premium put on that. You know, because, I mean, we're heading into a moment that's going to be a really sort of interesting and disruptive moment, because as a result of different technologies, you're actually going to see lots of existing jobs right now disappear.
Right.
Right? I mean, you think probably over the next 10 to 15 years, one of the biggest lines of work in the entire U.S. will go away, completely disappear, driving. Right? In all likelihood,
Autonomous cars,
you
yes.
know, a child born today, in all likelihood, will not get a driver's license. It's a whole different world. And you think, what is that, sort of what goes away with that? Truck drivers, bus drivers, taxi drivers, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, all of that.
The domino
right?
effect
All of
trickles
that.
down, yeah.
So, I mean, the impacts on the community are enormous. So how do we deal with that, right? And I think we're all sort of grappling for answers right now. But one of them is to create an environment where people have the resources to better build the ideas that are important to them, right? And that's a way to create an even more resilient community where people can better, when they see an opportunity. And by the way, entrepreneurship is generally built on someone identifying a problem in their own life.
Exactly.
Right? You start with that, and then you find out that a lot of other people share that same problem, and
that's
there's
our
an idea to build on.
So I
And many more.
got
Yeah.
two questions for you.
I know these are long answers.
No,
Sorry,
I
y'all.
mean,
But it was good.
we got to
Keep
inform
it
the
short.
people. We got to inform them. So one is kind of a key point. So if you guys don't know, you probably don't know, but about 2 years ago, we always like to give interesting facts when we do our event. 2 years ago, the Knight Foundation gave us the pleasure of having a grant, and we did this event called Spirits and Bytes. And at Spirits and Bytes, the food was catered by House of
Chef
Matt,
Teach.
by Chef Teach.
Yeah.
And so Teach is here now at the yard, and Teach hit me up, and he was like, yo, you remember when we did that event, Spirits and Bytes? I was like, yeah. He was like, I think we need to do that every Monday night. I was like, that's dope. I was like, but Spirits and Bytes? He's like, nah, not Spirits and Bytes. It's going to be bigger than that. It's going to be tech, beats, and bites. I was like, all right, so what do we have to do? He was like, well, you got to show up, and you take care of it, we'll make something happen. And that's the kind of people we have in this neighborhood. So I don't want you guys to think that we just fell upon this idea. The idea of what we're doing on the stage was based off a collaboration of us inviting someone to cater, somebody catering an event and seeing the power we had on the community, and then him reaching back out and saying, you took care of me, I'm going to take care of you. So the basis of collaboration is the big thing here in South Florida. So regardless of what you see on the stage, I just want everybody to be very apparent that not only was this place closed on Mondays, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the vision of Chef Teach. So with Matt being on stage and with Teach being here, I want to give Teach a round of applause because it takes a visionary to make that stuff happen.
At the back of the bar.
At the back, always chilling. But my man Teach held this down. So, you know, when I was talking to Teach and talking to, you know, always, Self-Born hit me up. Matt, what would Miami be like if Knight Foundation wasn't doing the funding it was doing?
That's a good one.
Well, I mean, Miami is filled with amazing people doing incredible things, right? I mean, Miami is a place where, you know, each one of us is incredibly resourceful, resilient.
I just want you to know, but I wouldn't be here if you weren't funding me.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate
Make
that.
that real clear.
But
Yes, you
know,
would.
I mean, you would. I mean, I think, you know, Knight Foundation, what we're trying to do is just trying to add to the amazing things that are already here, just providing a little bit of added value, you know, but what all we're doing, though, is, I mean, Knight Foundation, we always say, look, we don't have any of the answers or any of the great ideas, right? All we're doing is just trying to help others who have the great ideas and the great answers be able to do it just a little bit better, you know? So South Florida, I think, would be fine without Knight Foundation. But, hopefully we're helping just a little bit.
I
push
mean,
things
in
forward.
theory, cake is good, but chocolate cake is just a little bit better. But I'm just saying, I get where you're trying to be. I mean, I like the politically correct answer, but
Trying.
I mean, Knight Foundation is just what
Appreciate
it is.
that.
It's,
Right,
Appreciate
right.
it.
it's that chocolate cake. It ain't just regular vanilla cake. It's that.
Got a little flavor
It's
to
that
it.
grandma cake. Come in. I want
Not out the box.
slap your mama cake. I need that cake. Go ahead, Toya. Go ahead.
No, so sort of piggybacking on that, a lot of people try to seek night funding. And because you are so very much involved in the community, what do you look for when you find
There it
businesses,
is.
ideas,
Yep.
organizations to invest in? What's sort of that secret sauce, if there is one?
Yeah. Well, number one, it has to be aligned with what we're focused on. I mean, we try to pick a few core things to work at. Right now it's around arts, it's around journalism, and we have the program that I have the great fortune of leading, which is our communities program here in Miami, where we're focused on around entrepreneurship, right? And even with that, though, we're not actually funding entrepreneurs themselves, right? We're instead focused on trying to help create resources that then help support and propel entrepreneurs, trying to be helpful in building the ecosystem. And so for number one, I think it's getting a handle on the particular things that we're working at, right? And so those are sort of our three core areas. There are others for sure, but those are sort of the three big areas. But then if there's sort of an overlap there, then I think the next thing is thinking about something that's attacking a problem in a new way, that is particularly innovative, that's solving a problem that has been a particularly difficult one, that delivers community benefit in ways that we haven't seen, right? I mean, our whole thought is our funding, we want to be catalytic, right?
Yeah.
That we're not a sustaining funder, we're a seed funder. So if it's just to sort of keep something going, that's really not where we're going to have a role.
Right.
But if it's to start something new, that is where we're more comfortable being that risk capital. We're more comfortable trying to help get something going. But then what we're hoping for is that others will come in and sustain it. We can provide that funding to build a proof of concept. We may follow on, and that's happened. In fact, we've done 2 grants with Digital Grass.
Yes.
But our how we view it is that we want to help start things, and hopefully, as a result of the successes from starting, others come in and serve as sustaining funders.
And one last question before, because I really want you guys to get to know Matt, because a lot of people get around Matt and get nervous and don't ask the right questions. But another interesting fact is I remember calling Matt and telling Matt, I think we need to pivot because what we're doing isn't reaching the community enough. And I was like, I think we want to go more of a, kind of journalistic route. We want to tell the stories. And so when Teach came up with this idea, this was the opportunity for us to tell a story because truthfully, we just promoted this as a day party. So for the first month, people were showing up, didn't know there was going to be a talk show element to it. They thought they were just going to show up, drink and chill and network. Then people started actually listening to the content. They were like, oh, wait, y'all actually talking about something. These are the things I want to learn. And then quickly, with the scientific element of DJ Selfborn and Fly Guy, the music kind of generated the crowd we wanted to. So with all intents and purposes, you did take that risk, but you believe in risk. So
Can I add on that
Go
real
ahead,
quick?
go ahead.
So, I mean, one thing for sure, as, whether it's Knight Foundation or an investor of any kind working with, I think, pivots are good, right? Learning is good. The worst thing I think that all of us can do is we come up with some grand plan,
stick
and
with it.
we spend all this time coming up with it, and then trot it out, and it kind of works or it doesn't.
Right.
That's a trap we want to avoid. Instead, it's we come up with a plan that's thoughtful, that makes sense.
Right.
That's sort of rooted in real world, but then we want to test it and be constantly learning as we go, continually measuring, and then changing. Right? As we see different opportunities arise. And so, I know it can be difficult when you're going to an investor or funder of any kind and say, look, we think this is the way to go, but highly encourage always to do that and never sort of lose that posture.
Be willing to take a chance. Go ahead, Toya. I know you was about to ask him something.
No, I like what we were talking about with the pivoting. So have you sort of seen that? Has the Knight Foundation pivoted in terms of your engagement with the community? Have you sort of shifted your focus and done some different things?
For sure. So at the outset, our focus was really around, in our entrepreneurship work, this is just speaking to entrepreneurship work, our outset was really, our effort was, are we running out of time? No, okay, all right.
We may have a
I see
question.
the sign.
You
coming.
got about
The-
20
the-
more minutes.
okay.
You good. We good.
I think at the outset that we were more focused on around ways just to connect people at
Right.
the outset, because it felt like at the outset we're seeing all these amazing people doing amazing things, but it felt really disconnected.
It was. It was a very
Right.
silo community before
Very
certain
siloed.
things came around.
Totally. And that's an ongoing, I mean, we still haven't solved that problem. It's an ongoing sort of work in progress. But at first, we were really, really focused hard on that. Now, as time has gone along, while that's no one's declaring victory,
Right.
nevertheless, it does feel like there are lots of different opportunities,
Yeah.
or ways to sort of connect, right?
I think we've
And
had this conversation with Teach, and since you bringing that point up, every time we've looked at the crowd, we've always been able to say these are one of the more diverse events we've been at, from age to gender to race and everything. It's always a good cluster
Mix.
of people here willing
Yep.
to learn and listen. So, I mean, shout out to our crowd for actually taking the time to listen to us, and especially all the ignorant things I have to say. So we really appreciate you guys.
appreciate it.
So, but real
Great
quick,
things you say. I appreciate them hanging around on
Yeah.
with me.
I mean, got to be here for you. Want to go ahead and get one question in real quick? Want to do that?
Let's go.
Hi, Matt. So, question from the audience is, with Miami being the next startup community, where do you see Miami going in the next 5 years to ensure that that happens, and how do you perceive us getting there?
Yeah. So the big way that we get there is it has to be about the whole community. We have to create opportunities across Miami. That what we've seen in established centers of innovation is it's really a sort of a narrow part of the community, and that has to change. Right? And so Miami's great. The more people that are a part of this, the more success we'll have. So I mean, as we look around at the next 5 years, that to me is sort of the key thing for Miami going forward. And of course, there's in all emerging startup communities and centers of innovation, always a challenge will be talent and funding, sort of having places to go where you can get the funding that you need, having places to go to get the people and the talent that you need. That's always going to be a struggle, but that's not unique to Miami, so we'll always have to work at that. But to really succeed, it has to be about the entire community.
For Entre, because somebody else had the exact same question, and I'm just going to add the second part to that. For the entrepreneur support for organizations to aid in this vision, what do you think is the best thing right now organizations in South Florida can do to push this vision along as an entrepreneurial location and that startup hub? And then I have a follow-up question for that.
I think the biggest thing is to never settle. I mean, my
That's a good
experience
response.
is
Never
Miami.
settle.
Never settle.
Ever settle. I mean, my own experience is, I was for 10 years, I was a newspaper reporter. right?
Journalism, yes.
I was a journalist for 10 years in Miami. And, it's funny. You can sort of, you begin, you're interviewing a lot of people. You're getting to know a lot of people around town. You feel like you have your handle on the community in a lot of ways. I would say, since joining Knight Foundation, 99% of all the grants that have been made are to people and organizations. In 10 years as a reporter, I never met, right? So my experience has been the moment you think you know Miami,
Yeah.
You
don't.
know.
It surprises you.
right? So you need to continually reach out, continually expand your network, continually take risks. And if we do that well, I think we'll have enormous success. If we slow down in that regard, I think we'll struggle.
So, as a journalist, ex-journalist, you used to be a journalist. What do you feel is a good voice for Miami right now? And I'm not trying to be funny. Removing digital grass, because when we do these shows, we like to learn also. Who do you feel is a good voice for representing the direction of where Miami is going, or the direction we should be going?
Well,
A couple
I will
of
say, I think you both are great voice. Well, LaToya a little more than you.
Toya,
but,
tell
you
me,
know,
it's
but,
Toya,
you
man,
know.
it's Toya.
But honestly, and I really, really mean this. I mean, I think that the voices by Miami need to continue to be the voices across the community, and I really mean that. And what I mean by that is that, the great benefit of being in Miami is that it's on each one of us. Right?
Right.
This is not an environment where we sort of have an established class that
Right.
we're looking to, right? This is all of us collectively sort of deciding and making up what this community can be.
Yeah.
And so I think what we need to continue to do, though, is to continue to give voice across the community. And the great thing is that we now have that opportunity,
Yeah,
unlike
absolutely.
any time before. Through mediums, through social media in particular, we can now message and share and tell a story unlike we've ever been able to do before, and do it without permission, right? Which is something I think part of the culture that we're all building together that I think needs to be part and parcel of that, is that an environment where there's no asking permission.
Right. You have the platform. It's just about utilizing.
Absolutely. I mean, I think collaboration is a great thing. I'm not diminishing at all. A really important thing, just to have. But I also think doing, and if you see an opportunity, do it. If you see something that you want to say it. And I think that we all as a community benefit from that sort of, that sort of candor and not really waiting to think sort of what
Toya
should I
tells me
shouldn't
that all the
say,
time.
but
Every time I
I'm
put
sure
up here,
she does.
Toya is like, say it, but don't say that part.
Well, you
She
don't
be
seem
telling
to
me
suffer from that problem. Yeah.
No, you know what? But that's one of the things we actually took pride in, and that was one of the things that I really appreciated about you, because the conversation was, I'm going to say what I feel, and I want to make sure we speak out and ask the uncomfortable questions, because a lot of people, I think, they get timid and they lose focus of what they're supposed to do just because they're chasing a check. And at the end of the day, I've always said, and I'll say it on camera, we make our money in other ways. What we do for the Knight Foundation is we get funded to help re-support the community. So you invest into us to invest into the community, but we put a lot into it that people don't see. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to speak up.
And I think that's something that we need to continue
Yeah.
over and over and over again across the community.
I agree. Toya, go ahead and hit him with that one question I knew you was going to ask.
Yeah, so talking a little bit about community and collaboration, and this is going to take a little bit of a pivot, but
Okay.
because you have that journalistic background, the travel
Do it.
ban.
Travel ban. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
so the Knight Foundation, you're very big on doing sort of cross-cultural immersions, cross-country immersions. What's your sort of feel, and how do you think the travel ban sort of affects us, given that the Supreme Court just did the ruling where they're in favor
Yeah.
of a sort of amended version of what Trump tried to put into place?
Yeah. So I always start with a caveat that Knight Foundation can't engage in political activity. So we just sort
Right.
of get that
Put
out
the
of the way.
disclaimer out
We
there.
want y'all to get to know Matt
know.
Hagman. We are
Right.
now off of the Knight Foundation.
So,
Officially, Knight Foundation, we're no longer talking about you. This is about Matt Hagman at this
Yeah.
very
So
moment.
look, I mean, we're talking about, building communities of innovation and resiliency. I mean, innovation's built on immigration, period. Right? And we see that over and over and over and over and over again. And so, I mean, it's those countries in the world that have actually turned their back on the world, that have not embraced immigration, are the ones that are suffering right now. And it's the ones that have actually embraced immigration, that have embraced diversity, are the ones that have had success. And so to turn sort of our backs on the world in whatever form that takes,
Right.
we need obviously always to create a place that is secure and safe, and public
Exactly.
safety
Right.
is key for all of us, so we can, live our lives and pursue happiness. But at the same time, that it is actually, sort of, that we are a country, that it's, that is comprised of people from many different parts of the world, and
Yeah.
that is our great, thank you, that is our great asset, and we can never lose that.
Yeah,
So, Matt,
that was a good answer.
Thank you.
I want to ask you one of the questions I've always wanted to ask you about myself. I'm going to
About
do it
you?
on camera. Just about you.
Oh,
You, as a journalist, I would say me and Self-Born kind of talked about this, and Self-Born had a mixed CD called No Samples.
okay.
And it was about making original music. So as a journalist, if you had the front paper and you had the headline and the perfect story about where you wanted to see Miami in 5 years, what would that headline read?
It always is you do ask those questions. If I had to have,
The perfect, I mean, it's Miami Herald, Chicago, it's the New York Times. Everybody picks it up. And Matt Hagman has this perfect headline of where Miami is at 5 years from now. What does that headline read? What am I reading?
That's hard in a tweet.
it's funny. I mean, I think about the I go to a song actually.
Okay, that's what
right?
that's where I want to go.
So
Self-born, that's what we want.
You know, sort of the Mary J. Blige song "One World," One Love.
Ooh,
right?
That
Which
boy
she
hit
did
y'all with
with
Mary J.
Bono.
Blige.
And
Okay.
do you know the song I'm talking about?
Okay, first of all,
One Love.
we're gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna say this. Matt Hagman is a R&B enthusiast. So when me and Matt built our real friendship, we was at South by Southwest, and we had went to some event where you had to he was like, come with me, just come on. So we was
Right.
at South by
that's
Southwest,
true.
and we go up to this little rooftop area, and
fun,
Mary
yeah.
J is playing all this. I mean, I'm talking about Jodeci is straight up 90s.
He's right there with it.
Matt is jamming, and I looked at him. I was like, Matt, what you know about this? He looked at me. He was like, what
do
you
you
know
know
about
about
this? So just so y'all know, Matt is all about R&B. This
Love
man is an
that.
R&B enthusiast. So
Love
yes,
that.
Matt, I do know the song. I'm young, but I ain't that young. Okay.
So in so many ways, I mean, that feels like Miami. Or what Miami can be.
Right.
And so I mean, we are unique among American cities in that we are sort of this amazing mashup of people and culture from so many different places. And if we can realize sort of the promise of that, then I think we'll realize the promise of Miami.
I like that.
I think we got a question.
I know. We need a question.
So we have two questions that I'm going to combine into one, which are, what are the top 3 or 5 do's and don'ts when applying for Knight Foundation funding?
Okay, sure. Top 3 to 5 do's or don'ts. Okay, so number 1, highly encouraged just for email, right? We're all inundated with email. Just try to really get to the point, right? Just because it just helps, right? By the the third or fourth sentence to really know
What you're trying to do.
what you're trying to convey.
Right.
Just because it's hard to get through all the different stuff that's coming in.
And I was about to say, from a person that went through that grant process, they are very limited on time. Be on time and be concise and precise with what you're
Yeah.
trying to take care of.
Yeah, I mean that really helps. Just because you just get very constrained. The second thing I'd say, and maybe this should have been the first, is try to get clear in your own idea of what it is that you're trying to achieve. Right? Here's the problem that we're trying to solve. Here are the activities that we're going to undertake to solve it, and here are the outcomes we hope to achieve. Right? And you can apply that to so many things, right? Whether it's a startup you're trying to launch or a non-for-profit, but ultimately you're trying to solve a particular problem, and there are particular things you're going to do it. And as a result of all that doing, you hope to have some outcomes. And having a clear idea of what that is really, really helpful when we sit down. And you don't necessarily have to have hard and fast metrics. I mean, it can be a sort of a general sort of thought about the outcomes you want to achieve, but you do want to have a clear idea of what it is that particular problem you're trying to solve, and what it is that you want to do. And as a result of all that doing, what you hope happens. Now, of course, we've already talked about this whole notion of pivoting,
Right.
that things will change, and I think that's our hope is that from a Knight Foundation perspective, that all grantees understand that. Maybe we should do a better job of making that clear, that as we move forward, things can change. And we all change with it. And we want that change. But I would say the second thing, but maybe should have been the first thing, is just really think hard about what is the problem you're trying to solve, and then what you want to do to solve it. But I would start with that first one. It's interesting. I was watching a talk recently by the guy who co-founded Waze, the app, the traffic app Waze. And he was talking about don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem.
Right.
Right. Think hard about that problem you're trying to solve, and you might come up with multiple different solutions to address it. And so, oftentimes we find ourselves fighting over a solution and holding fast to that.
Yeah.
And so I think really think hard about the problem.
All right.
I guess I only gave 2 answers to your. What do you want? 3 to 5? 3. 3. Okay, a third
Combine
one.
1 to 2 and just make
The
it
third
happen.
one I think is just to take a look and see what Knight Foundation for us, and take a look at what we're doing. I mean, sometimes we'll get a request, and we're trying to be clear about what we're focused on. Sometimes we'll get a request where clearly there hasn't been much due diligence done. Just looking at our website to see what are our focus areas, and it's helpful just to get an overview of the particular things that we're focused on.
All right. Toy, you want to hit them with quick, we'll give them about 6 rapid fires?
Yeah,
By
let's
the
go.
way, I really loved your question for Barron at Overtown.
Nice. Thank you. Thank
That
you.
was
Thank
a good
you.
one. That was a-
So we want to kick it off?
Yeah, I got one.
Go.
We'll go ahead and go. So, Matt, you named Mary J. Blige, but you get to have any R&B artist, dead or alive, come and perform for you and your wife.
Oh,
The
we would
net.
be the same. Mary J. Blige, for sure.
Mary
All
J.
right.
Blige?
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Who would
Sticking
you
to it.
choose?
Ooh.
Ooh, that's
Who
a
would I
good.
choose?
He just turned it all around.
Right?
R&B? Honestly, right at this very moment, it would be Luther Vandross.
Okay.
Yeah.
I say Whitney.
Back.
Whitney?
Cool.
I would
Cool.
say
I like
Whitney.
it.
My
Like
rapid
it.
fire
Makes
for
you
you
rested.
is what's on the horizon for the Knight Foundation?
Yes.
Another what?
What's on the horizon for the Knight
Horizons,
Foundation?
the Knight Foundation. Well, so our work in Miami continues, focused around entrepreneurship. I mean, it's been 5 years. We're just getting started. And I think one thing we need to think about in all this work is it's a long game, right? I mean, I had the awesome
The
privilege-
Valley didn't happen in 5 years.
No, I mean, it's amazing. I had the amazing privilege of being in Stockholm recently, right? And Stockholm's a place that their startup community turned out Spotify, right? Minecraft. One of the co-founders who did Skype is from there, right? They've done amazing things, right? And per capita, they've launched more billion-dollar companies, I think, than any city outside or any region outside of Silicon Valley, San Francisco.
Okay.
So amazing, right? But what they were saying is they were like, look, we've been at it for 20 years.
Wow.
Right.
Takes
so
time.
it takes time. We need to continue to work at it. Now, I would argue Miami's changed a lot
Yeah.
as it relates to entrepreneurship and the startup community than where it was 5 years ago to now. It's a dramatically different place. But, we have so much more to do, and I think we just need to continue to work at it. But I think it just goes back to some of the things we talked about. We cannot settle. And you continue to reach out across the community and be really intentional about it. Just saying all are welcome and opening your doors is not enough.
Yeah.
Right? We need to continually reach in and pull more people into it, and it really has to be about the entire community. If we do that well, then we'll have enormous success.
So if you remove the Knight Foundation hat, and I know you are super pro Miami, but I want that heart to heart.
Okay.
What's one missing element of Miami to take us to that next level from not just being a startup community, but to being an established community of success?
Related to entrepreneurship and startups?
Entrepreneurs, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, the next thing we're really waiting for is that big, outsized, crazy home run, right? Where, because what we've seen is we see communities are able to build these interconnected, startup communities that provide the resources for entrepreneurs. But ultimately, for it to work, is you need to have those big successes that create that multiplier effect, that create that spillover.
Yeah.
And so I think we've seen some examples of that, but we still need more. Because ultimately, what we're trying to create is this paid-forward network. Trying to create an environment where each one of us here, right, where there's no question, if we have a particular idea that we want to build or a problem that we want to solve, that we know we have the resources to do it here. We don't need to go anyplace else, right?
Toya, you got 2 more for him?
And so, hold on one second.
Go ahead,
And
go ahead,
so,
go
I know
ahead.
these
No,
are
we got
long
you.
answers. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
So, though, what we want to do is not only create that people can build those ideas and themselves have great success and become stars, but hopefully those people become funders and mentors the next group coming
We
up.
need that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get that pay it forward environment, right? And that then becomes sort of a force unto itself that continues to spin
Recycle
forward.
the success. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's the ultimate prize that we're seeking.
So on the flip side, what's one of the biggest challenges you face at the Knight Foundation?
Belief.
Gotta
That
believe.
that you see so many. I think everyone here, so many here, believe in the promise of Miami and sort of the promise of each person sort of sitting here tonight. But it's really interesting. You do run into sort of corners of Miami. People who've been here their whole lives,
Yeah.
who, for whatever reason, sort of have decided that we have a certain fate. That sort of what is set before us is sort of foreordained, right? And that's not true. We make this community as we want to. And so oftentimes I feel like you run into people who think that the Miami that they have known at different points of our city's history, that is the Miami that forever will be. And that's just not the case.
So Matt Hagman has a future. And where does this future take him? Is it Matt Hagman for president? Is it Matt Hagman, the president of the Knight Foundation? Where is Matt Hagman going to be in 5 years since you've touched so many people's lives in South Florida?
Oh my God, I appreciate that. Thank you. Sure, I don't know. I mean, we're on this journey, right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, each one of us, this is life's journey. And, it's, I don't know what's next. But what I do know is there's no place that I would want to be trying to figure out what's next. Miami's, like so many of us, Miami is not a place that I'm originally from, but it's home.
Yeah.
Got you.
Miami
Yeah.
makes it easy
Yeah, it really does.
to stay and love it. Yeah.
It really does. It really does. And honestly, it only becomes easier and easier and easier as we continue forward. And so I don't know what's going to be that next thing, but I know it's going to be here.
I think you'll be touching lives no matter what you do. So
Appreciate it.
I definitely know the one thing we don't know about you is that drink of choice, because it's about 20 people waiting to talk to you. So
Okay.
what is the drink of choice for Matt Hagman?
Okay, well, now I was with Chef Teach, and we had a nice glass of Hennessy, which was
Boy, look!
before
I'm telling
coming
y'all
up.
right now,
More
this
surprises
man
every
is
time.
drinking Hennessy and listening to Mary J. Blige.
Look,
It is
ain't even
official.
know.
It is official. So we really, I think it's all due respect. We just want to say this while you're here. Thank you for supporting the vision of Digital Grass and House of Mac. Thank you for taking the time to come out to the show, and thank you for believing in us and what we saw as a change that was needed in Miami to become a voice and to let people see what was going on. So, I mean, I don't really have to do as much to thank Knight Foundation, which we do, but I personally, as the CEO and founder of Digital Grass, with LaToya, Dante's here, Alicia, Q, Rosie, we want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to reach out to the community. So, guys, I know you've done it before, but this is a very special moment for us with Tech Beats and Bytes, because without Mr. Hagman, none of this would be possible. So if you please could give Matt a round of applause for
Yes.
coming out
Thank
for
you,
Tech
guys.
Beats and Bytes.
Thank you, guys.
Really big.
And that means, just in case you don't know, when he says a nice little glass of Hennessy, that means Hennessy with no chaser. But by the man, it's Hennessy straight up or neat or on the rocks. But Matt, thank you for coming out. We're going to play some music. Matt will be at the bar for a little bit. It takes a lot to get Matt somewhere for 2 hours straight, so appreciate his time. Don't ask no frivolous questions. But this has been another edition of Tech Beats and Bytes with my best and the hostess with the mostest, LaToya Sturb. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Without her, this show would be horrible. It would just be another dude up here talking. But thank you very much for another edition of Tech Beats and Bytes. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.